You are listening to the Life in Attleboro podcast, where we interview the city's most interesting people who are making a positive difference in our community. Hey everyone, I'm the host of the Life in Attleboro podcast, Mike Sullivan, and today we are bringing you a very cool interview with Superintendent of Schools, David Sawyer. Did you know you can get an oil change and some fresh food at Attleboro High School during the school year? We also talked about efforts to help fill the more than 150 open positions within the school district right now. There's also some good news when it comes to breakfast and lunch for students next year, and something you might not expect from the superintendent, something he did back in the late 80s that might have you talking. Enjoy our conversation with Superintendent David Sawyer. Superintendent David Sawyer, thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a super busy schedule, so I will keep this tight. First question I want to ask, it's your background story. I have two children in the school system. They're brand new to the school system. I know you are the superintendent. I know you have been for years. But I want to learn more about you, so that's why I invited you, and thank you. I'm very gracious for you accepting this invite. So I want to know more about your backstory. How long have you been in the Attleboro public school system? How long have you been superintendent, and was it always your goal, or just kind of follow the path to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor. I always enjoy the opportunity to speak on behalf of the schools and to represent its interests in the community and share our story. I'm a lifelong Massachusetts native. I was born and raised in Worcester, moved to Medfield for junior and high school. My father took a job at Dunkin' Donuts. We had to move closer to Randolph, so the rest of his commute. So I actually did high school there. Went back to Worcester for both my undergraduate and graduate degrees, and then finished up with a master's in education from Clark University and was looking for a job. And Attleboro was the only place that would offer me one. So that's how I started here back in '96 as a history teacher. And I've been here ever since. Moved to Attleboro in 2001, married an Attleboro girl, raising Attleboro children. In fact, I'm the only member of my household that didn't go to Hyman Fine Elementary School. Sometimes they're very mean to me about how I don't fit in that way. So I've been here all along. I started as a history teacher, became department head, went into administration at the high school, then moved up to central office, did assistant superintendent, and then I've been superintendent now for 8 years. I don't know who grows up wanting to be a superintendent, so that definitely wasn't how this happened. With each role, did the best I could, and that led to other opportunities. And it's just really been an honor to serve this community, the community that gave me a chance when, again, no one else would. It was hard to get a teaching job back in the mid-'90s. Those were hard to come by, and I felt very blessed to have this opportunity, and I've been trying to pay it back ever since.
I love that. Superintendent Sawyer, I can tell you're just invested in the community, invested in the school system with that answer right there. So thank you. You mentioned it was hard to get a teaching position back then. Last December, you spoke with the school committee and city council, and you essentially said we have a funding issue, not a budget issue, but a funding one. Right now, there are more than 150 positions available in the school system, and the spending per pupil, you said, is in the bottom 10% of the state. How can we address those?
Yeah, so to be clear, we were pretty proud of what we do with the funds that we're given, which is why I wouldn't say we have a budget problem. We very responsibly make use of the funds that our taxpayers provide the schools. And if you look at the data, I would say that Attleboro punches above its weight class and does so through some real hard work. So it's not a budget problem because we're responsible and we plan ahead and we we're pretty successful in not putting ourselves in some of the bad situations that historically the schools have done and that other communities sometimes find themselves in, where you end up short and you have to have big layoffs and things like that because you have these structural problems that you can't accommodate from one budget year to another. And we've been pretty fortunate for the last 8 years to not have any of those kinds of problems, because I think we're doing a good job of not having that. But the story that I don't think people in Attleboro really understand is how underfunded the schools really are in comparison to other communities. And in trying to understand that, we have to make a distinction between per pupil expenditure and net school spending. So, one way to look at school funding is to just say, okay, well, this district has X number of students, and we divide the amount of money they spend by that. And then this other district has Y number of students. We divide their number by how many kids they have, and then we compare those two numbers. And on a certain level, that makes sense. It helps you to compare districts of different scales. But the fact of the matter is that the cost of educating each student is not the same. Educating high school kids is more expensive than educating elementary kids. Students with special needs are more expensive than students that don't have special needs. Language learners are more expensive than general ed students. CTE students are more expensive than general ed students. So there's all these factors. And, one of the big ones is poverty, right? Students in poverty certainly have needs that, cost more to meet, which is why you'll see that the net school spending numbers in big cities are much larger than in small towns. Because generally speaking, when you put all this together and figure out how much it would cost to not just educate this number of students, but this many students of these kinds, you get very, very different numbers. And so Attleboro and many of its neighbors are low on the per pupil expenditure. In fact, we're in the bottom 10%. But, that in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem, because there are plenty of communities that number is actually much closer to what you would expect someone to be spending on the needs of those students. But when you compare Attleboro on a net school spending, so net school spending is the state's formula that says, with the actual students that you have in front of you, what is that cost? What should that cost to educate? And that's where our number is woefully off. The average district in Massachusetts spends, I think, 126% of the net school spending number. So the state sets a number, and then most communities spend well above that floor. Because they're wealthier and they have the money to do so. And quite frankly, that formula that sets that number was set back in the 90s. And there are a lot of factors why that number doesn't really represent what it actually costs, because it doesn't factor in some of the changes to how we do business now. So most communities have responded by just spending more. But Attleboro doesn't have the kind of resources to do that. So, it's a struggle for us to basically meet that minimum requirement. Which is why when we do meet that requirement, we're so far behind other communities. It's the gap between Attleboro and what it would be funded if we were funded like an average community in Massachusetts is about $26 million.
Wow, there's a lot of factors in play there. So with all of that said, are there any efforts underway or in the works in the near future to try and obtain more funding from the state locally? How can we inject more or get more funds for our schools? Yeah, so the answer is definitely. We're very fortunate here in Attleboro that our state delegation is understanding of this problem and represents our interests well in the discussions up at the State House. The problem is that political solutions are usually easiest to achieve when they affect large numbers of communities. So when our legislators can find other communities that have the similar problem, it's easier to get some traction on an issue. Our problem is not a widespread problem. Most communities in Massachusetts are either poor enough to get much better funding from the state or wealthy enough to just compensate internally for that difference. Attleboro is a tweener where, we have problems that most communities don't have, but those problems aren't at the scale that the poorest communities have. And so we get left out of the help, but don't have our own means to compensate. And so there aren't a lot of places like this. That's why there's only 3 other communities in Massachusetts that are on both of the bottom 10% list, both bottom 10% in terms of per pupil expenditure and bottom 10% in terms of net school spending. Usually if you're on one list, you're not on the other because something is balancing it out. We're in a pretty unique situation that we're on both lists. And because there aren't a lot of other communities, there's not a lot of
support from other communities to do something about it because they don't have that same interest.
Makes sense. So one thing, I'll transition a little bit here. Thank you for those answers. So summertime is a time when children and families who are in need might be going without meals sometimes. It's food insecurity kind of comes to light during the summer months when breakfast and lunch isn't offered at school. You have some good news when it comes to meals next school year. Is that right?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, the federal government made the lunch program free for all students. And we saw the benefit of that. We hoped that they would continue it. They didn't. And luckily, the state saw the wisdom and stepped in. And so Massachusetts continued that program, even though the federal government backed off of it after the pandemic. So the good news here is that this year they funded it, and it's in next year's budget as well. So our school lunch programs, that includes breakfast as well, they're free for all students. And that's a big benefit to a lot of our kids.
Huge benefit for thousands of children and families. That's awesome to hear, Superintendent Sawyer. So overall picture of the state of Attleboro Public Schools, where do we stand as it is today?
Yeah, I think that there's good news and bad news, to be quite honest. I mean, the good news is we're doing some amazing things. And I think we're really emerging from all the difficulties that were created by the pandemic in one piece. I think that in talking to other superintendents, I think some other communities continue to struggle with some of the implications in a way that we're lucky and fortunate to be able to move on. But the real thing that I think the community understands is that the new Attleboro High School is a tremendous opportunity for our students. It allows us to do something that no one else in the Commonwealth is doing, which is that we are basically able to run a career and technical high school for all of our students in town. So most students, to have access to CTE education, have to make the difficult choice of going to a regional school, leaving their local district, commuting to another town to go to school with students from other communities. And that's, a choice that many kids make. And in fact, it's so popular that there are tremendous waiting lists at all of the regional schools. So there's real demand for this kind of education. I think a lot of families are seeing that, the traditional college path isn't for everybody, that what we're paying for college and what we're getting in return isn't the same deal that they were offering 20, 30 years ago. And so as more and more families struggle with that decision, I think also more people are realizing that there's real value in the trades. And so people want access to this kind of education. And the great news about how we do it is that, you don't have to choose between those two things like I think you did once upon a time. We educate everyone on a college path, right? We could talk about college readiness. Every student in Attleboro is being prepared for success in college, and every student in Attleboro has access to participate in one of our career and technical programs. And so we have kids who, upon graduation, can decide, do I want to go straight into the world of work? Do I want to do a combination of work and college? Do I just want to go and, go the traditional college path? All of those opportunities are available to them. And we're doing that in a world where they get to spend a significant amount of their time during the high school day in a shop learning a trade or, learning about an industry that interests them and that they get to do hands-on learning. It's a really, really powerful experience, and no other community is able to do that. And that's back to the new Attleboro High School allows that.
I am so excited for my children to attend Attleboro High School one day. They're only 5 and 3 years old. I want them to take their sweet time getting there, but I can't wait for them to attend Attleboro High School. It is beautiful. We went there. My son plays in the youth basketball league, and the high school team had them for, the youth basketball night, and the coach and the players spoke to him, and he was all pumped. But it's absolutely beautiful. And one thing I found out when I was there, and which is what you already touched on, the career and technical side, I didn't know this, and a lot of people might, but I didn't, and a lot of people might not know it. But can you shed some light? I can go to Attleboro High School during the week, get my oil changed, and then grab a fresh meal while I'm waiting for my vehicle to be done. Can you explain on that? That's awesome.
Yeah. So some of our programs, have a a commercial element to them. So auto, you can come in and get certain auto services done. My family, we certainly, one of our cars, we have service regularly with the auto department. But yeah, we also have, the culinary runs of a full restaurant. We have a salon for the cosmetology department. We have graphics. We have a marketing department that sells great Attleboro swag. So yeah, we do a lot of business with the community. We have an area that's open to the public during the day where people come in and visit these programs and do business with us. And it's a great opportunity. If you've never eaten at the Bistro, which is the restaurant, the food is tremendous. And because we're running it at cost, right? Because it's an educational experience, you will not get a better deal in the city. It's great pricing and wonderful food, and to be served by kids who are taking such pride in their work is part of the experience.
That is so cool. I love that. And obviously, that's just during the school year. Perfect. So I'll be attending some Blue Bistro meals for sure. When I spoke with the mayor on the first episode, she talked about how student enrollment is actually up, which is pretty, I wouldn't say rare, but it's uncommon throughout other parts of the state. Is that because of many things that you've already touched on?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's a little bit of an anomaly in Attleboro. Most of the Commonwealth is experiencing declining enrollment, and the way that schools are funded, I think in most places, but certainly in Massachusetts, is by enrollment. So if you have declining enrollment, you have financial difficulties, and there are certainly a lot of communities around us that are experiencing that. That's why they're all going with school choice, because that's an attempt to compensate for their declining enrollment by drawing in people from other communities. We don't do school choice in Attleboro because we literally don't have the seats. We're at capacity or very close to it, because Attleboro, for the entire time that I've been here, we've been at pretty much 6,000 students steady throughout the last, well, let's just call it the last 2 decades. And the rest of the state has gone down. And so it really has been part of our success that, we haven't had to deal with some of the negative implications that declining enrollment has caused. And at different moments, it's been different things. But right now, the high school is what's driving that. Attleboro High School's enrollment is the highest it's been in decades.
That's such great news to hear. It's awesome. So I'm a parent, like I said, of 2 public school students very early on in the process. But what can I do? What can the thousands of other parents with children in the school system do to help make it better?
So, the answer there is definitely to get involved. Parent engagement is a huge cornerstone to student success. When we're working together, we do much better work than we're working, either alone or even worse when sometimes there's conflict. That can get in the way of the best outcomes because, not every kid comes to school every day, excited to do academics. That's not the case for every student, and different kids have different issues that they have to work through. And so when we work together to understand what a student's needs are and to meet those needs and help them to find their path to success, because there are lots of different ways to get there, we do much better work. So when parents are a partner in that, when we're a good partner with parents, it goes both ways. We do much better, and that's why. When we look at, say at the high school, like our dropout rate, the majority of the kids who have been with us since they were little kids, they're doing well because along the way we've, established a good relationship. We've understand who that student is. We know what we need to do for them to be successful, and we find success. Most of our challenges with older kids are because those are kids that have moved in more recently, and we don't know them, and they've had bad experiences in other places, which is partly why they're here. And that's where the challenges come, because building those relationships over time is a huge benefit, and I think we do that quite well.
And it starts early, and it's a team
effort.
It
does, absolutely.
Love it. Superintendent Sawyer, what are you most excited about for, I know the summer's coming up, but for the rest of 2024 and then into 2025?
Yeah, so, we have some really good things in the works. When I took on being superintendent, I had big dreams about what we could accomplish and where we could take things. And it was very disappointing to have the pandemic kind of come in and disrupt all of that pretty significantly for a good 4 or 5 years in total when you think about it. So we're really excited to get back to work and to pick up where we left off and to move the needle in terms of putting in place the kinds of systems that we think are going to make a big difference in the educational outcomes for our students. We're really focusing on the learning experiences the kids have in the classroom. I don't know about you, but in my own personal education, good teachers really stood out because when you're in a room with someone who was good at what they did and made it enjoyable, what a difference that made, because there were some other rooms where that wasn't happening, and man, was that dreadful. So trying to make it so that every minute in every classroom for every student is that high quality learning experience is really what we're pushing for. And we're bringing in great professional development and really supporting our teachers so that they can do their best work. Because everybody comes to work wanting to do their best. This is a tough place to do well because we're so under-resourced, right? We don't have the same things that most other communities have, and we have to make up the difference through our own hard work. And so supporting our teachers and giving them what they need and helping them to do their best work is what we're here to do. And finding ways to do that with less is part of the struggle that we have, but one that we take pride in what we accomplish. And so we think we have things in the works that are really going to start to pay dividends for our students.
Superintendent Sawyer, when you said you always remember the teachers that made a difference in your life, quick story, my son Brady just finished kindergarten this year. He had Mrs. Jost, and she is absolutely phenomenal. He got teary-eyed with like 2 weeks left to go in school one day, and he woke up and he was all sad. And I'm like, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" He said, I'm sad because I only have 13 days left with Mrs. Jost. She's my best teacher, and I wish she was my only teacher." And I man, you're absolutely right. These teachers are phenomenal, and they absolutely leave an impression on our children. So it absolutely 1000% agree with that. All right. We talked about some serious stuff. I want to end with some fun stuff to get to know you even more. You ready for some rapid fire? When it comes to ice cream, what's your favorite flavor?
Favorite flavor? Probably coffee.
Coffee. Love it. Dogs or cats?
I've got both, so don't make me choose. You'll make one of them upset.
All right, fine. What are their names?
I got two cats, Phobos and Deimos, and I got a dog, Indy.
Love it. Love those names. Favorite kind of food?
Well, I grew up in an Italian family, so I would say Italian is the food I enjoy the most. But as a result of that, I don't really like going out for Italian because it usually disappoints.
Okay, good to know. What's your ideal vacation? Are you going to the beach? Are you going skiing? Are you doing something else?
I am a beach bum to the core.
Love it. Me too. One thing most people don't know about you that if they saw you in the street would spark a conversation.
Well, back to that beach experience. I was the bar back at the Andrea Hotel in Misquamicut, Rhode Island, in the summer of '88.
Wow!
And you want to talk about an education? that was something.
Bet. That's fun. Superintendent, anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just that Attleboro is a wonderful community that believes in education, and I'm so fortunate to lead the schools. And I encourage parents to get involved and to learn about what's going on in their schools and help us to make it the best that we can.
Superintendent Sawyer, once again, thank you for being so invested in the school system and our community. I really appreciate you sharing some time and some insight with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed our conversation with Superintendent Sawyer. We are just getting started here on the Life in Attleboro podcast, and it would mean so much if you could hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and most importantly, tell a friend or family member who lives in our great city. Share this episode with them and get them to subscribe. And if you think you know someone who would make a great guest on our podcast, someone who's making a difference in our community, or just has a really cool story to share, please shoot us an email at lifeinattleboro@gmail.com. lifeinattleboro@gmail.com. And most importantly, make sure you sign up for our email list. The Life in Attleboro community is growing extremely fast, so if you always want to be in the know about events happening in our great city, be among the first to find out about brand new podcast episodes, and most importantly, if you want to save some money and support the great businesses and restaurants here in Attleboro, you got to sign up for the email list. You're going to get exclusive benefits. You can do that by going to lifeinattleboro.com. You'll see the sign-up display right there on our homepage. That's it for today, everybody. Life in Attleboro is a great thing. Support our community, promote positivity, and make a stranger smile. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Life in Attleboro podcast.